Hey everybody, my name's Ann. This is my fiance Sharon.
Hello.
And this is our first YouTube live video. We've had a page called The Bottom on Facebook for a year, and we've built about 1,800 followers. Great people. It's a support page for like addiction and mental illness. Um, what had happened to me was I had gotten addicted to drugs and alcohol very early on. My parents were like old school Portuguese, so when you got sick, they gave you brandy and things like that. Uh, my father was pretty abusive, so that played a part in how I grew up and my behavior. Um, excuse me, not a COVID cough. Um, so let me see. A lot of abuse happened until I was about 7. My mother met a really great military man and married him when I was about 9. We moved all over the place every couple of years. Um, and for like a traumatized little musician kid who really couldn't talk, I had a really bad stuttering problem. Um, and because I couldn't talk, I got made fun of a lot. I was always kind of small, and I was always kind of into my instruments.
Your mom started giving you instruments when you were really young?
Yeah, my mom started giving me instruments when we were in Germany. She gave me a mandolin. Um, I was born overseas, and I think we moved to the States when I was about 3. So she met this really great guy, and we moved to the East Coast to New York. And once I hit Rhode Island, I was about 13. That's when things got really bad. I was already like cutting. Um, that had actually started when I was around 8 or 9 years old. So around 13 or 14, the cutting got really bad, and the drugs started to get really bad. I was smoking a lot of marijuana, hallucinogenics, and drinking the neighbor's vodka on the Navy base that we lived in Rhode Island. I would go over there and listen to his stereo and go into his liquor cabinet. So um, I really didn't attend school. My mom was really sick with something called agoraphobia. That's where you're kind of afraid to go out in the open. And her problem got so bad that she couldn't even leave the house or go next to the front door. So I didn't go to school. I stayed home with my mother. And I would get high, all day long while my step-up dad was off doing his military thing.
In other parts of the country?
Yeah, he was all over the place. So I was really kind of left unattended for the most part, and really just did what I want. I left when I wanted to. I came back when I wanted to. When my mother needed me, I would come home. And when I was out, I would seek drugs, and I would seek them till I found them. So that presented a problem with the school board. School board came over. CPS got involved, and my mother proceeded to get into some sort of a verbal altercation with him. She was a little firecracker Portuguese lady, and
Where you get it from?
right. So not long after the altercation with CPS, they took me away and put me in an adult rehab in North Kingstown. And it was High Point at the time. It's actually AdCare now. It's a great program. So I think I was there for about 3 months, and things just got worse, especially once we hit Fall River, Massachusetts. I met a lot of people. My music attracted a lot of people, and everybody that I hung around with got high.
Drugs were easier access there?
Yeah, drugs were easy access there. I got anything I wanted. And pretty much at the time when I was 14, 15 years old, it was acid, and I was doing a lot of acid, which really messed with my mental health. And I would go to a place called John C. Corrigan, which is a mental health holding tank, I guess, for lack of a better word. And they would transport you to whatever hospital they felt. So at this point, I had gone to the psychiatric hospital for at least 72-hour evaluations, if not, a month at a time, 2 months, 3 months at a time.
How many times by then?
I don't really know. I do know in 2017 to 2018, I was Baker acted, and that's what the state of Florida uses for a 72-hour hold, 47 times. But at that point, things were coming to a head.
Right.
I had left. See, my mom passed away.
When you were 25.
My mom passed away when I was 25, and because I was so close to my mother, it really kind of crushed me.
Affected your relationship with your kids, your marriage, your tattoo business?
Yeah. It affected everything. My drugs got in the way of everything. At that point, I wasn't really getting high on dope. I was just maintaining and not getting sick. My heroin habit started when I was about 17 or 18 years old, and I was shooting heroin by 17 or 18 on a regular. And if anybody that's watching is an IV opiate user, you know how sick you get. So that became a full-time plus job. And let me see. So mom passed away, and I just kind of went crazy for a while.
Did you ever disappear for a couple weeks?
Well, yeah, I would disappear all the time. And I would end up in just, strange places, strange apartments, towns, cities, and then eventually states.
Mm-hmm. So your mom passed away, you were 25.
My mom passed away, I was 25, and everything just kind of came crashing down. My marriage, my one and only marriage so far, was pretty much over. I, I had sold everything, stolen anything I could, robbed absolutely anybody I could, got away with as much as I could until I couldn't get away with anymore. And then I left Massachusetts and ran to New York.
Were you scared?
Oh, yeah. I had done some pretty bad things before I left. And some people were looking for me.
I'm glad you've gotten the chance to make some amends.
Yeah. Over the past almost 2 years now, I've made it an active goal to make amends. It's really important for my recovery, and I think recovery in general. So I end up in New York, and
in the city?
Yeah, I already knew where to get things. Well, I ended up in the city later on, but I was in upstate New York, and I already knew where to get things because I had lived there off and on throughout the years. So I went right to the dope man, and I got right on my thing after about 3 days. And I was staying with my brother. He dropped me off at a homeless shelter in Elmira, and it was my first homeless experience. And that was actually a really profound. Now that I look, reflecting back, it was really a profound experience.
Mm-hmm.
But Christmas Eve, 2 feet of snow, I'm dropped off at the homeless shelter, and that was
By a family member.
Yeah, that was my first homeless experience. And I pretty much stayed homeless off and on until 2 years ago. when I was in New York, I was hitting the heroin really hard, and I was drinking really heavily. Now, whenever I drink alcohol, one of two things happens: I either get suicidal or violent. Um, on this occasion, I got both, and I was renting a room in the town of Ashland in New York, and started drinking really heavily. I was dating somebody, and I was on the phone with them. And apparently, we had some sort of an altercation where a verbal altercation where I said I was going to harm myself, and I have a history of doing so. She took it real serious and called the cops. By the time the sheriff's department got there, I was just loaded, and I wasn't listening to them. I wasn't having it. And when they found me, they said I was blood soaked on my left side, and I was cut from shoulder down to my wrist, holding a classical guitar and a steak knife, waving steak knife in the air and saying "fuck you, shoot me" over and over and over. And that's all I said. Um, they ended up getting me down with pepper spray, and after I told them that I had a blood disease, they proceeded to beat the hell out of me, um, throw me in their car, wash themselves up, and call the rescue. Rescue got there, took me to the psychiatric center in Elmira, and 2 days later, 2 days later, the sheriffs came to come and indict me on charges of attempted aggravated assault on a police officer, 2 counts. And when I asked the guard what was going on, like when was I going to get out, what exactly was I in here for, and what was I charged with, he told me, and I says, okay, well, how long does that give? When do I get to go home? He says, well, that gives you about what do you say, about 15 to 25. And I said, 15 to 25 what? He said, years. He said, you have a B violent felony. And you're not going anywhere. He said, you almost killed those police officers. Later on, that was found to be untrue. I never touched them. I never even went after them. But because of the things I was saying and the fact that it was actually my third or fourth attempt by a police officer, they had enough. Now, the really interesting thing by cop, the really interesting thing is in the town of Ashland or Chemung County, there was a guy named Ralph Bucky Phillips, and he was up there sniping police officers at the time. And there was also two brothers, Brady, I believe, and they killed Officer Spear in Ashland. Okay, look this up. Ralph Bucky Phillips in upstate New York, Sarah, Pennsylvania, sniping police officers back in 06, 07. Well, my thing with the police took place right after Bucky Phillips was arrested for killing all these police officers, sniping them. And right after I got arrested, the Brady brothers robbed the bank and killed Officer Spear. So the district attorney was going to fry all three of us. And that's what they tried to do. So long story short on that, I gave them 2.5 inside and the rest on paper, and went about doing dope.
Did you use inside?
No. And I didn't use in prison either.
That's fine.
Yeah, no, because I was in the county for 19 months, which is against the law, anything after 12 in the state of New York. But they held me for 19 months. And when I got to upstate, I went before the parole board, and the little parole board lady with 2 guys on the side of her lifted up her head after looking at my papers and said, "You belong here." 3 days later, I was on a bus back to Elmira. And I was homeless. Somewhere along the way, I had an overdose, and some things happened, and I wound up in Sayre, Pennsylvania, in a psych hospital down there. And I met somebody that I hung with for, I don't know, about 8 months. So I'm not even sure. So we were going around and collecting aluminum cans and just stealing anything that wasn't tied down and pawning it and whatnot to get, the drugs that we needed. She got caught. She got out the next day with a date to go to court. We got my check, got on a bus. I said, "Where do you want to go?" She said, "Florida." I said, "Let's go." We got on the bus and went to Tampa. I lost her shortly thereafter. I left her. I'm not sure where I left her, to be honest with you, but I ended up in a hotel smoking crack, and I never saw her again. Okay, let me back up a little bit.
You got yourself from New York to Florida already.
Got myself from New York to Florida. And when I got off the bus in Tampa, it really was a zombie apocalypse. You guys ever hear about the zombie apocalypse? Well, in Tampa, that's where I discovered the zombie apocalypse. There were sidewalks full of people that were just laying on the sidewalks and in cardboard boxes and blankets, and sleeping bags with backpacks. And when I got off the bus, I knew right where to go. They were my people. And that's where I landed, and that's where I stayed for a little while. And I just stayed there and got high. When I ran out of it, I got up and I
What were you getting high on then?
Spice. Yeah, spice and fentanyl. Spice, guys, it's a killer. They used to sell it, and it was legal for a time, and it is really bad. Bath salts and spice, things like that. Very, very
We're
bad.
blamed for all kinds of evil, nasty things.
Terrible evil things. Okay, so I end up in Florida. Got off the bus in Tampa, and hanging with these people. I don't know, months and months went by. I would pick up my check would fall on my card every month, and that was the big day. That's when I would go and just have an all out, buy as much dope as I could, and hope I would die and not wake up. Of course, I woke up. Obviously, the mission at that point was to just die. It was just because all I was doing was existing. I hated myself. I was like 112 pounds. I didn't eat. I barely slept, and I was just a complete mess. After we split, I ended up in a hospital in Bradenton, and a couple days into that, they were doing 15-minute checks, and the tech came by and did a check on me, and she said she had a funny feeling. And she came by a few minutes after that, and I was hanging in the bathroom by a sheet by the door. I had propped myself up just high enough to hang there. And when she found me, she called for rapid response, and I was blue and unresponsive. So they sent me to the state hospital in Pembroke Pines, Florida. I say all that to say this, right? The disease of addiction is so progressive that if an addict continues to do it, the bottom will continue to fall. It'll always continue to fall until you either quit or die. I've been actively doing drugs since I was 8 years old, 9 years old. Heavy when I reached my teens. I was a musician. I've always been a musician, so drugs came even easier to me because if I walked into a bar and saw a guitar or saw a piano, I sat down and I got tip money. When I ended up in St. Pete, Florida, every Thursday night I would go to the piano bar, even as filthy as I was, and I would sit at the piano, and they would throw money on the top of the piano. And at the end of my little 20, 30-minute set, I would take all my tips and I would run to the crack house and I would stay there until it was over. And I'd do it all over the next day somehow, that was my life, chasing and always chasing. Um,
Running on fear.
Running on fear and fumes, and just chasing my tail and never getting anywhere. I started talking to my daughter at some point, and we got talking to the kids on that FaceTime, and I think I'd been talking to them for a good year or so. So I had been down in Florida, in Pensacola. I found myself in Pensacola living out of a meth trap, and initially I wound up in Crestview, and then I took another bus down to Pensacola and went to the rescue mission down there. And I asked the first person that I know, because addicts have radar, what's around. And he showed me the only thing that was around, and it was meth. And I had never even seen meth before in my life. And that's all that was in Pensacola. And there was an abundance of it. So I found myself, smoked it the first 2 times. And smoking anything was never my thing. I was addicted to the needle as well. So I found quickly that you could, you could shoot the stuff, and I did that. I'm not even sure how much time went by, because I was just constantly running at 150 miles an hour.
Not sleeping for weeks.
No, at the end it was 28 days. I was up for 28 days. I was in a complete psychosis. I had ran out of the trap with a gun at my head, and I ran to a convenience store and started yelling, calling an ambulance. I think I'm having a heart attack. And those cops were really nice when they picked me up. I know cops are having a real hard time. A lot of them guys aren't doing real good things to people. A lot of police brutality and nonsense that should not be going on. But the guys that picked me up that night were really, really good guys. There were 3 of them. And I didn't have a shirt on. I didn't have any shoes on. And I'm not sure why the guys at the trap took those along with my phone and the battery. But that's how the cops found me, 112 pounds, soaking wet, freaked out, half naked, screaming. And they were just great. I'm not really sure what happened after that, but I ended up on a bus with a 1/4 ounce of meth on my way back home to my daughter, on my way back home to Fall River. And I was so excited because I was finally going to give getting clean a real good shot and try to be a dad and try to be a grandfather. And when I got up here, well, 6 hours later, I was out of meth, but the trip took me 4 days. I got up here in the same clothes that I had been wearing for years, I think, and walked to my daughter's house from the bus station in Fall River. From that, I couldn't hold on. I couldn't stay clean. I was out in Burrowville, staying in a house with a religious lady, and I was coming off everything, heroin, fentanyl, meth. I was off all psychiatric medications, and I ended up just taking my money and going to Vermont. Stayed up there for a couple of weeks. Bad things happened, and I came down here. Came back down here, got into a hospital, and when I got out of the hospital a few days later, I think it was, I went to the Providence Rescue Mission, and this is where things are going to change for me. I didn't know it, but this is where things were going to change. At the rescue mission, of course, there were my people, and I was getting high. I found somebody on the streets that we could panhandle together and pool our money and get the drugs that we needed. which at the time were crack cocaine, fentanyl, and heroin. I'm an IV drug user. He's not. The guy I was hanging with was not. We would panhandle and pool our money together. That went on for months and months. One day, we just got high all day long, and it was all of a sudden it was about 3:30 in the morning, and I'm real dope sick, and my stomach's cramping, and I'm about in tears, and I'm going, TJ, I have got to have some dope. I got to get some dope. And the dope man was in the back of the car, and he was just giving us problems about it. And finally, he gave me and TJ a bump, and TJ went out almost immediately, and I stuck him a few times.
With Narcan?
Yeah, and he came through. I think I did another bump, and I went out. And
did you shoot your bumps or something?
That night I snipped them because I didn't have a needle. I would use needles wherever I could find them. But yeah, I think the bump that took me out was I sniffed it. Well, I went to this really black place, and I remember floating there in this really black place. But I didn't have a body, and there was nobody else there. And there were no sounds at all. But I could see everything. Even though there was nothing but black. It was like I could see into black, through more black, into more black and beyond, like infinity. And I could actually see through transparent black. No sounds. And it was so peaceful. Like I'd never, ever experienced. No drug had ever done this for me. Nothing. There were no lights. There was no big voice, loud voices. Bless you. Not a COVID sneeze.
Not a COVID sneeze.
There were no lights, no stairs, no clouds or angels or trumpets, but there was peace. There was this unbelievable sense of calm and peace, and I just floated there. But I didn't have my body. But I could see everything. That's the best way I could describe it. And
did you feel joy or just peace?
I just felt peace and calm. And I floated there, and I could look all around me into black and more black. And it was just so peaceful. And then I wasn't there. And I came to in the rescue and ended up in Rhode Island Hospital.
So they revived you with Narcan as well?
Yep. And I ended up in the crisis unit in Providence, where I met a caseworker named Priscilla. And Priscilla said she was going to help me to get some clothes, and she was going to help me with insurance and doctor's appointments and get me healthy. And put me in a program and help me get clean. So they put me in a program in Providence called Men's Roads to Recovery. And I finally got some sleep after some few days went by. And I woke up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and I felt great because I finally got some sleep. And I was like, I'm clean. I slept. I'm finally going to get this together. And no sooner did I say that I walked into the bathroom, which was like a communal bathroom, like a jail sort of environment, really is what it was. And no sooner did I get in the stall that I heard some familiar sounds, some popping. I said, "Hey, what's going on?" And the guy in the next stall knew me. We'd hung out and talked. And he said, "Look behind you in the mirror." I looked behind me, and his hand was sticking through the crack of the stall in both bathrooms. um, and he had a needle, a loaded needle, and I took it right away. And I begged myself not to do it. I didn't want to do it. Uh, and I cried to myself. And even though I was telling myself not to do it, I was doing it. And after that, the two guys that were getting high, uh, on the same stuff with me, they were just off the chain. And a few hours later, the first shift people uh, came on, and I just couldn't deal with it anymore. I got a worker, and I asked to go in the room, and I told them what had happened. And I told them myself. I didn't say anything about anybody else, but I told them myself. And um, not long after that, three social workers showed up, and I'm freaking out. I want to walk out. Uh, I hate myself more than ever because I just can't stay clean, and I'm crying, and I'm telling them this. And three social workers came in: Priscilla and Sophia and Ruth. And um, I ended up walking out. I was just too agitated, and my anxiety was too high. So I ended up walking out, and I just said, "Fuck this, I'm leaving." And Ruth came with me, and she wouldn't get but an inch away from me, and that was it. And um, I connected with Ruth right away. So when she followed me, I didn't give her a problem like I normally would have to anybody else. I think it would have been impossible to approach me at that point. But we walked out, and I'm telling her I'm never going to get clean. My life is over. It's always been a mess, and it's never going to change. She stayed with me, and she listened to all these, suicidal statements that I was making, and uh, still stayed with me. And I sat down on a wall. And she sat down next to me, and I was just telling her that this had to stop. And they called the police, and I knew it. And I told her, when the police come, it's on. It's on. I'm not going to make the same mistake as I did in Elmira. They're definitely going to shoot. You need to get out of the way. And she talked to me and talked to me, and she touched my hand, looked in my eyes, and she said, "I just lost my mother, and I just had a baby. And if you do this, you're going to traumatize me for life." And she cried. And after some words with the cop, me and the cop, I said, "Get the cops away from me. Tell them to step back and walk me into the rescue, and that's the only way I'm going." So she talked the police into stepping back, and she took my hand and walked me into the rescue. I've been clean since that moment. Since then, um, I ended up having a birthday party with Ruth. She brought a guitar over. I didn't have a guitar until then. She brought a guitar over, and uh, a red velvet cake. I was going crazy on red velvet cake. I'm an addict.
For a long time.
I'm an addict, so once I like something, I go crazy on it, like Dr. Pepper. Anyway, that's a whole other story. I ended up going to meetings, and I ended up getting involved, and talking to people, and reaching out, and a few months of that went by, and I found I was really good at giving advice to people. So, like, especially the younger guys. The younger guys would come up to me, and they would, ask me, "How do I play that? How do I play this?" And then we would talk about addiction, and they would ask me how I did it after so long. Uh, and I still talk to two of them guys, and they're still clean. Um, so I started reaching out to people and talking to people, and I started doing these little live videos out of a little tiny room that I rented, which took every penny of my check. Um, but I was going stir crazy, so I started doing these little live videos, and I play a little bit of guitar, and then I would talk about how I made it through my day. And people started following me. And then this lady got a hold of me. Her name's Robin. And she said, I've been following you and I've been watching you and I listened to your music and I listened to your story and I want to write a book about you. And I said, what? She said, yeah, I want to write a book about you. And we started talking and I started giving her notes and telling her all about my life, kind of like I'm trying to tell you guys now. Along the way, I had electroconvulsive treatments. I've overdosed numerous times. And I've got some brain damage from all of that plus the meth use. So my time is messed up, months, dates, what time it is. You know, I forget from one second to the next because of all the damage that drugs do over time. And I just had surgery to repair all these muscles that came apart because of all the drugs I did for so long, right? All these muscles, they separated and came apart because of all the drugs I did. So that doctor had to go in there and had to take those muscles and sew them back together. So, I mean, and these things that I'm telling you about are a direct result of drug use. I know that addiction wants me alone and depressed and suicidal and eventually dead. But after it's made me suffer. And an active addiction will make you suffer. It will bring you to your knees. And if it doesn't kill you, it might change you. And if nothing else, if you get nothing else from this, give getting clean a shot and see what it does. If your life is unmanageable and you find that drugs rule your life and you've had all kinds of consequences, DUIs, losing relationships, losing jobs, and all that stuff, homelessness, right? You can come back from that. I had to put the needle and the dope down. And every day I have to fight to keep it down, every day. Even though I had this amazing spiritual experience, and I believe that I was touched by the hand of God in that deep, dark place.
One day at a time.
Yeah, it's one day at a time. It's still a struggle sometimes, you know.
Especially when life circumstances can trigger you one way or another.
Yeah.
You've developed some really strong, good coping skills. Mm-hmm. I'm really proud of you.
Thank you.
You're going on 2 years.
Yeah, and my dad, me and my step-up dad, we talk all the time. He's even helping me out with my page. I mean, you know, that's amazing because I mean that man loved me no matter what I did, and I did so many bad, terrible things, and you know he's still like, come on, son. You know? So, yeah, you can overcome addiction. We do recover. So this is our first video, and that's my testimony.
You did great. You even were chronologically in order.
Okay.
You didn't need a checklist.
To the best of my ability. So, we're going to try to see you guys on a regular. Check out our page, our Facebook page at the bottom. It's hashtag the bottom, or you can also look it up by
Sylvia's Rose LLC.org.
All right. So we do live videos there, and we also have other people's stories on there. There's like a daily vlog of how I get through my day, clean and sober, and wake up to do it all over again. So check it out. It's the bottom on Facebook, and we'll see you all real soon.
You're not doing it alone anymore. We're going on a little over a year together.
Yep.
So you've got a big fan right beside you cheering you on every day.
And she's always with me. She helps me out. She's the brains and the heart. You'll see her on all the videos as well.
You're married, right?
Oh, absolutely. I'm currently trying. I ask you every day, but so you can find out more on the bottom. Check us out. Check us out there on Facebook, and we'll see you guys soon. You good,
Thank
baby?
you for taking the time to watch.
Thanks for watching.
Be well.
Love and respect.